What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another powerful episode of the Creative Journal podcast. This is entry number 52. And as you may have guessed by the title of this video, it is the 1 year anniversary of this podcast since we started running at the very beginning of August last year. This episode is going to be a recap of all of my favorite moments throughout 1 year, my first year of podcasting. And I'm getting emotional even like thinking about how I've been doing this show for 1 year. It's really crazy to think about that. You guys have been awesome in the support I've received, has been motivation to keep going. I spend several hours on this every single week, and obviously, it's not something that generates revenue or makes money, but the fulfillment that I get and the connections that I've made as a result of having this podcast is incredible, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So, if you've ever listened to an episode, if you've ever liked an episode, if you've ever commented, engaged on a short reel, or even just opened up the Spotify homepage, um, you have a special place in my heart. And I cannot wait to continue to grow as a conversationalist and a podcaster and use it as an asset to grow my business and grow my personality as well. So um, thank you guys for tuning in. Um, I started recording these podcasts on an hour and a half drive commute, just talking into my phone. I'd listen to podcasts all day while I was at the agency job, come up with all these creative ideas, people I wanted to talk to, theories and ideas I had around creativity, design, and business. And I literally, on my hour and a half drive home, opened up the audio snippets feature on iPhone, just the app, and started talking into it. And that was my endless repetition into becoming a podcaster and learning how to speak clearly. Still not where I want to be yet, but definitely a lot closer than I was when I first started. If you guys don't know my story, I have double hearing loss in both ears. I took speech therapy growing up, and I always felt like I was a victim of not being able to elaborate my thoughts clearly. And the podcast was a big reason I wanted to start doing that, was because I was insecure about these things. And through just skull crushing repetition and coming back to it every single week, not easy to hear my voice personally, especially when I go back and edit these things. If you ever want to feel insecure about yourself, just like, put yourself through that every week. I highly encourage it. But yeah, so this is going to be an episode of recap of some of my favorite moments. I have 10 or 15 snippets in here that I'm going to include. Guests like Kelly Sells, Andy DeVito, James Barnard, Lacey Picazo, Matt Vojacek, Jeremy Slagle, Josh Hall, and Liz Mosley. Some of the awesome people I've had a chance to talk to as a result of doing this show. Um, so I'm really excited to share this one with you guys. This means a lot to me. And if you've ever tuned into the show, like I said, you have a special place in my heart. And I hope this podcast has benefited you in some way. And if it has, it's been a win for me. So without further ado, let's dive right on in. Settled on your priorities of family and design and how you use that to make choices that
Sure.
are hard sometimes.
Yeah. I think I think that these are the kinds of things that change as you get older, as you have other responsibilities, as you get married, and you have a kid, and now you have a mortgage payment, and you're paying for all their benefits and everything that comes along with all of that. So, when I was 22 years old, when I was your age, I got married when I was 24. So, dating my wife at the time, and I worked for that video and film house at that moment, and I worked crazy hours. If they needed me to work on a Friday night, I'd be like, babe, I can't go out on a date tonight. I know we had plans. They need me to stay and work. Didn't get paid or compensated for the extra hours. If I had to work on a weekend, occasionally I had to work a weekend. And I don't look back at that and say I had a bad work-life balance, because I didn't, my life was not as complex as it is today. It was weighted a lot more towards trying to figure out my career, trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I looked at it as every project I do is something more to learn, and it's something more to kind of add to my quiver as I continue to move forward. So, I have two kids that are both, I have a 21-year-old son and I have an 18-year-old daughter, both full-time graphic designers now. My son did the 2-year at Columbus State and got hired. First job interview, he went in, showed his portfolio, they hired him full-time. My daughter has 1 year at Columbus State, and she was about ready to start her second year this fall. And the company my son works for basically said, "Hey, we have a job opening. You think Faith would be interested?" So they just brought Faith on. So she's not even going to worry about school next year. She's done.
It's like you, man.
Yeah, exactly. And they have nights where they work late. Their boss is really great. Sometimes, if they're slower, they'll let them off a little early. And they're flexible when they need to, which is good. But I'm also constantly encouraging them at their age, like, you're going to work more hours right now. It's part of the thing, like lack of flexibility. But the goal would be that as you start taking on other obligations, as you start bringing on all those other things, that you're far enough in your career that you can start making demands. Is not the right, it sounds harsh to me, but you get to be more picky and choose, be more, specific about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do when you go into a job interview.
Mm-hmm.
When you're 18 or 21 and you're coming right out of college, they're just going to be like, we own you. And that's just kind of the way it is. When you're 40 years old and you've got a family, you can go in and say, "Hey, I'm willing to work here, but my family is more important to me. And I need to be off at 5 o'clock. And I understand every once in a while, something's going to have to give. I'm willing to do that." But, I went into several job interviews, basically saying that, like, you're not going to get the best me if you're working me 80 hours a week. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like people to know that up front, because it's like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it changes as life changes. I've been so blessed. I've been so fortunate to, to be able to run my own studio, and I don't do any self-promotion. I've got a website. I'm really bad at social media. I'm really bad at it. I'm just so busy with work. And I guess that's a good problem to have. But I've been so blessed to not have to go out and try to find work. God might change that in 6 months. Like, this may completely dry up. I don't know. I have no expectations. I have no 5-year plan. I have no goals I'm trying to reach. Like next year, I'm going to try to get 20% more. I just don't. I feel like I'm super blessed to be able to do what I'm able to do even right now with where I am. So like, if this is how it is the rest of my life, I'm thrilled. So, I trust God with all of it. And I wish I could say that it's some sort of confidence that I have. It wasn't that way when I first started my business. You could ask my wife. I would see me routinely curled up in the fetal position, rocking back and forth in the corner, wondering what's going to happen next. And she just was constantly reassuring me, God is good. He's the provider. You are not. All you can do is step through any open doors that become available and open to you, and allow him to close the ones he doesn't want you to have. Just have your hands open and just be willing to trust God for everything. And I can just say that that's worked for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but that's worked for me. So.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think, I've had times in my life where, I've struggled with a sense of direction. And I think, and I'm 22 years old, I'm always learning. And I ended up going to college for something that I wasn't designed. It was strength conditioning. And I had always kind of had that creative thread. Like, I hear a lot of similarities with you. Like, I have filled probably 7 or 8 journals growing up, something I always did. I would always draw. Um, I got a lot of affirmation from that in high school, and like the I designed shirts for high school events and sporting and stuff like that, posters, advertisements, and everything. And I think the thing that comes through very clearly when I listen to you is that you have that self awareness, and you know what you're working for. And when you say you haven't worked, you never work late. I'm not to put words in your mouth. I know I'm sure you work late nights sometimes, but like, that the best part of your day is, what comes after work. The, it's just spending time with your family.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful. So, um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, just you said you went on a month-long international trip to,
Mhm.
I think it was Cambodia.
Yep.
And I think reading that about you, I feel like it was a really powerful trip. Do you want to speak on that a little bit, and how like time away from design can kind of open up your eyes to new things?
Yeah. So John, who you mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
when he started an agency in 2000, I'm sorry, 1998, and I jumped on with him, and we basically ran that company together. It started out just the two of us, um, and I literally got home from my honeymoon and started that. We started that company. Um, John's 5 years older than me, so he had been able to save up some money. So he owned the company outright. But I worked for him. We ended up running that business for 12 years through 2009. And early on, John, you could tell he wasn't fulfilled as a graphic designer and running his own agency. It just, you could tell there was something else that was just a void. Um, he took a short-term trip to Cambodia on somebody asked him to go along, and he just was like, okay, I'll go. And he just completely fell in love with and was completely heartbroken over the situation with home children in Cambodia.
Hmm.
And so by the time 2009 came around, we were running a small design agency and like 16 orphanages in Cambodia and Thailand out of that small business.
Wow.
Um, so
Wow.
I never got a chance to actually go because when he would be gone, I would basically be keeping the place afloat. And so when Element closed, I got the opportunity to go and spend time there. So that's kind of the long story. But I ended up taking my family and taking my kids. Ended up leading a few trips over, um, and I just really, really, really love the people of Cambodia.
Hmm.
It's such a great experience. So, yeah, I mean, just being away, not only just being away from work, but also just like you get an understanding of what it means, like when the Bible, for instance, talks about your daily bread. Like what does that mean? We don't have any understanding for that. Like for us, we go to Costco and we buy the 4 loaf pack, we put it in the freezer and we use it as we need or whatever, or we buy like that giant thing of chicken wings. But in Cambodia, you go to the market every morning, you buy fresh meat because you don't have a refrigerator. You eat whatever you have that day and you don't buy any extra because you don't want it to go to waste. The money that you made today is the money that you have so that you can afford to buy the food for tomorrow. And then tomorrow you work for the money to pay for the food that you buy the next day.
Hmm.
And so like it just completely changed in many ways my perspective on what real needs are, and as Westerners and Americans we can't possibly comprehend.
Right.
So it kind of reset a lot of things for me. Um, and so just coming back to work and kind of looking at like my business, looking at my clients, looking at all that stuff, it just kind of like changed the paradigm through which I saw my work.
If something feels uncomfortable to you, whether it's networking, whether it's talking to certain people, whether it's doing some kind of a website or project that you've never done before, that's probably the thing you should do. That feeling of discomfort, that writhing in your skin, not in a bad way, but that's something you should really lean into. And I find the more and more I go throughout my career, the more I find that this feeling is something that I want to lean into. And it's not always easy, but it is always worth it.
It kind of ties back into the point you made earlier with the passion thing. Whereas people say follow your passion. My passion truly is helping people, but helping people could look very different depending on the service, depending on the season of life. So, like, technically, I was helping people when I started my web design business because I was helping my clients. Now I help people with their businesses and entrepreneurs early on and more established going to the next level. So the passion thing, like what is cool about that is if you have a passion, it can be multifaceted. Like my passion wasn't just building Divi websites. I enjoyed that, but I don't even barely do that anymore. Now I coach more than anything else. And like I said, communicate and podcast. So I don't know where I was going with that, but it just goes to say, like, if you have a passion, don't limit yourself with that passion. It's one thing that's kept me nimble and really excited about being an online entrepreneur too, is it does often change. Like things switch up and things change up. I'm learning to appreciate that more and like that more because I went from being a freelancer, graphic designer, to web designer, to business owner, to agency owner, to course creator, to community builder, to coach. Like I've done 10 different things, podcaster, YouTuber, like I'm doing all these different things in a 10-year span. And that'll be the case for a lot of entrepreneurs.
How soon after sending emails do you try to transition to some kind of a Zoom call or in-person meeting? Do you mention that usually in the first email, or is that
I
something
I mention
you?
it, if not in the first one, it's definitely the second one. So my 3-point process is, this is a cold outreach, right?
Mhm.
So I email the person, I'm cordial, I'm friendly, I'm relevant, and then I close with, I will follow up with you again soon to see if we can find a time to get together. I never ask a client to let me know when they want to do something. It's
Yeah.
my job to schedule an appointment with them. It's
Yep.
my job to follow up with them. It's not
Mhm.
their job to follow up with me. They're
Yep.
getting my email plus another 25 or 30 or 50 every day.
Yeah. Kind
No.
of reduce the friction for them
Yeah.
to commit to. So, like, if someone were to ask you, it's like, "Oh, we need to get coffee sometimes," just an example. You say, "Okay, great. Let's go to this place this time. Meet me there?" Question mark.
Yeah.
That's something that's really been valuable for me is that
Yeah.
if you want someone to, if you really want to get someone's time, because people are very protective of their time, and rightly so, you have to
Exactly.
be not demanding, but very and very putting yourself out there.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
mhm. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's the first email, and then I always include a link to our website for our general reel, so that they can at least see what we're about, and that will take them not only to the reel but to the website, so they
Okay.
can look at the people, the team, the work, a couple other projects in our portfolio. Hopefully, they'll spend some time there. And then I let them know that I'll follow up with them soon to talk about, next steps or getting together or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's the first point. That's the first touch point. The second one is anywhere from 5 to 7 days after that one. I'll email them the second email and say, I hope you're having a great day or your week's off to a great start. I use a bunch of different ones. But my second comment is, I wanted to bump my email back up in your inbox and ask if you had a chance to take a look at our work or, whatever I've asked them to do. And then my
Mhm.
next sentence is, do you have a few minutes to talk with me? Here's a few
Mm.
times that I'm available. I'd love
Okay.
to tell you more about Space Junk, and I'd love to learn more about how you work with studios like ours for video and animation.
I not to cut you off again, I'm sorry, but I
No?
love how you say in the first email, "I will follow up in X
Yeah,
amount of time," so it takes the pressure off them to respond to the first one,
yeah.
and they already know. They're like, "Oh, okay," they read the first one, they say, "Okay," I don't have to come up with a
I
clever
don't have to
response,
do
but
anything.
yeah, they know who you are.
Yep.
And then when they see the second one, it's several days later, so they're not like, "Oh, man, so spammy," but Yeah. So as you're saying it, I'm putting these things together. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, what's the last three part of it?
So the third part of it is, again, going back to relevancy. If they haven't gotten back to me,
Mhm,
or they haven't indicated that they would like to schedule time with me, then I'm going to hit them with a very specific reel that is relevant to the type of work that they do as a brand or as an agency. So I have software that I use to build our reels, where
mhm,
I have every project that we've ever done that is representative of the type of work that we do.
mhm,
Gosh, I don't even know how many projects are on there. Hundreds, hundreds. Um, but I will build a reel that is specific to their brand, not a big one, just like maybe 2 or 3 projects that they can click on and go watch and say, "Okay, all right, so here's a live action project that they did. Here's an animated project that they did in my vertical, like, banking, retail, food and beverage, whatever vertical I'm reaching out to. I make
mhm.
sure that I'm not showing a food and beverage company a banking commercial, you
Right.
know?
Mhm,
Um, but that's my third touch point is, look, I'd really love to get together with you. If you don't have, I don't go to the negative side. I try not to ever say, if you don't have time. I try to always be until we're able to meet. I wanted to show you a couple projects that I think are relevant.
mm,
And then
mm,
here's the reel, and that's a link. And again, that's a little further down, so they're not clicking on that first and not reading
mhm.
my email.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'll say again, I'll follow up with you again, but on the third email, sometimes on the second, depending on if there's a response, how that
Mhm.
process goes.
Yeah.
Um, I'll include my calendar link and say, if it's easier for you, whether it's next week or when you have time, here's my calendar link. Feel free to go on and schedule an appointment. I get
Yeah.
a lot of appointments through my calendar link.
Mhm. You use Google Calendar?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems to be the best. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of value in that framework. Like
Yeah.
that's something that people who are looking to take solid action, that's something you can do today is just start that three-step sequence. I'm gonna be rewatching this and taking notes for sure.
Good.
But yeah, that was worth a lot for sure. But I
So
really
there's
appreciate
there's
you. What is your job? What you do now? How is that kind of taught? What has that taught you about leadership? Like,
Yep.
because you have a ton of students, a lot of, and from what I gather about you, you really value giving back. You value the mentorship side of it. I know there's a couple programs at Ohio State that I'd love to give you a platform to talk about. But how do you see your role as a leader now, and how do you value that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So as a leader of my team, there's my primary focus is really to build up my team. That's my primary focus is how do I make them feel valued. So the one thing that I like to do is how to identify these opportunities. I mean, one, it's talking to them. I mean, every day we talk, and whatever it is, whether it's about design or if it's about their personal life, whatever it might be, just interacting with them to understand who they are as a person, but then also where do they want to go? What do they want to do? So
Mhm.
to me, that's always the biggest thing is understanding that and knowing that, okay, well, she wants to be a creative director someday. All right, what can I do in my space, in my capacity to help her get to where she wants to be?
Mhm.
So like I said, my role is just making sure they feel valued and understanding and looking at those opportunities for them. Um,
Mhm.
transitioning from a designer to the lead designer to the director and having more of that leadership role, it's definitely important to make sure that one, yes, your still primary focus is strengthening the brand at Ohio State. I mean, that's it, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
1A is building the team, making sure the culture is great, and making sure they love coming to work every day. And yeah, sometimes it's challenging, no doubt. And I've learned my lessons throughout the years of, how do I continue to build that, and what's the best ways to do that.
Mhm.
Fortunate, here at Ohio State, like I mentioned, the resources we have and in the leadership we have. I mean, I can go to, some of my peers and say, hey, what's the best way that I can handle this situation? And we had some great feedback.
Mhm.
So being able to do that, I mean, it's really what also makes me love to come here to Ohio State is giving them those opportunities, finding those opportunities, and seeing them grow from where they were to where they are now. I mean, we just hired a couple new designers last year, and it's amazing just after 1 year how far they have come. Not only just their skills, but their soft skills as well. Their communication, how they're communicating to clients. I don't like to say clients; I like to call them partners, but essentially it's all the different units within athletics that we support. But how they engage with them, how they interact with them, the questions they ask, right? So it's all about that design process and how we as visual communicators can help support each of the different units and all the different teams that we service. So seeing them grow is a huge reward in my eyes. And I think you were touching on this as well, like the student internship program that we have here. Is another area that I really feel a lot of pride in how we continue to develop that. And hopefully the students feel the same way. I mean, we try to build a culture, build a foundation for them that they can always come to my office, ask any questions they want, right? My door is always open. That's how I always am. I'm a transparent leader. I'm always going to tell you how things are, but I always want feedback as well, how I can get better. So with our students, it's the same way. It's how do we help support them get to where they want to be, whether it's the skill set, whether it's, okay, here, I see that you are interested in motion design. Here, come talk to these people and they can help you with that and then help you better that skill. Or here, I want you to lead this project. You can communicate directly to the client and work with them. And that way that'll help build your communication skill, right? So all these different areas we're really looking to do in building not only the designer, but the person, so that way they can really grow and once they graduate, they're ready to go. And that's the other thing too. And I'll stop after this, but seeing where our students have gone and where they have had opportunities and jobs after graduation, it's like I feel that I've had a part of that, right? So we've had students in the past, like they're leading their own company right now. Lacey Picazo, I don't know if you guys know her, but I mean, she's huge right now in Columbus, one of the best leading creative leaders in Columbus right now. And she did great work, and she worked with us, and I love that she did. And maybe she would say this and maybe not, but I feel like what we've helped provide her, just a little bit of guidance, maybe helped her to get where she is, where she started, I should say. But just different instances like that, and seeing where these students have gone. And yes, Ohio State in the program 100% contributed to that. But I feel that the year or two that they're with us, the most that we can get out of them to show them that real world experience is what we're trying to achieve. So that in the smallest way possible, then it's success in my eyes. So
that's awesome, man. That's really awesome. You can tell you're really passionate about that. And I mean, it comes back to you too. Like you see all these successful students and I'm sure they have nothing but kind things to say about, their time there and everything that they learned, and having a part to play in that is, I imagine, super rewarding. So
absolutely.
Said Lacey Picazo.
Yeah. She's a beast. She is good. I'm telling you.
Yeah, we might have to have her on the show. She sounds like a high performer for sure.
Oh yeah. I would definitely recommend her. She's really good. Has built a great team.
Yes. Awesome. Well, kind of branching off that, you interact with a lot of students. You went through the program yourself. You took the steps. You did all the rules like we talked about. What are the traits, the habits, the skills that you see in your most successful people that you mentor that go through the program, people that are most successful in, the creative industry, whether it's at Ohio State or anywhere else, that you think would be good values to have?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. The biggest thing is one is communication. I think, and that's everything in life, right? You can point that all back to communication, relationships, partnerships, whatever it might be. So someone who is willing to ask questions as well. And when I say communication, it's also asking the questions, because sometimes, and we've in the past, and we've had this, we've had students where they would come in, they would do their work, and they would leave. I'm like, well, are you really trying to get anything out of this internship? What are you trying to do? Or are you just trying to get paid? You know what I mean? So we try to show them the value of, yes, you want to get paid, and that helps support what you're trying to do and with rent and whatever else you need it for. But also make sure that, you're getting the most out of these internships and these opportunities that you are afforded to have. So, the communications is a big one. Willing to learn is another one. Is knowing that, yeah, I don't know everything, right? Coming as a student, so making sure that, hey, if my boss wants me to try a motion design project, all right, well, I've never done it before, but what do I need to do to learn that specific skill?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, again, going back to asking the questions. Hey, I'd love to do this, but can you help me get to where I need to be? It's like, absolutely, we can help you with that space. So willing to learn is another one. Punctuality is a huge one to me. It's making sure that you're on time,
Yeah.
or
There's that athletic side coming out of you right there.
yeah, 100%, man. I'll tell you
Mhm.
what, and it's true, because athletics is a different beast. I'm telling you, and I've had. Now, I've only worked in athletics, so I don't know everything, but I've had enough experience in as far as others, peers, colleagues in the industry that I've heard from,
Mhm.
that it's completely different. I've just recently had somebody that just took on a new job, and the pace is so much different, man. We are
Mhm.
juggling 100 projects all the time, whereas in the freelance world or the agency world or wherever else. I'm not saying you don't, because they do as well, but it's just a different beast. But anyway,
Mhm.
but punctuality is a big one to me. Is just let me know that you're going to be here, when you're going to be here. Make sure you're on time, because that translates to the real world then, right? Because if you're late for
Mhm.
work, or you're always late for this or this and that and the other, I mean, that's a big red flag, where it's like, all right,
Mhm.
well, do you really respect not only the company you're working for, but your supervisors and everybody else? So that's
Yeah.
a big one.
What have you found about teaching that kind of fills your cup the most? I know you work with college students, so probably people that are quite young. Um, but what about that really fills you up? And I know you talked a little bit about it, but what's been your experience with this so far?
Yeah, and I have a bit of imposter syndrome when it comes to it. I wasn't formally trained. And so when you talk about like self-taught, like literally I self-taught myself, and luckily I had enough talent um to get by with that. And teaching, I've only done it in the last 2 years, and I kind of fell into it, and I was given the opportunity to do it, and I was again scared, and I was like, what do I have to say? And after 2 years of it, I found out I have a lot to say.
Mhm.
And as I poll my students, I actually ask them, like, what are you looking for? What do you are you- have you gotten that within learning of this? And I found some kind of pain points, and I think that I can address those pain points. And I never would have thought that that would ever be the case for me. And one of the things that it's also inspired me to do is actually go back to school myself and get like if not anything, to break the cycle of my family of getting education. And I looking back on it, I never even considered why I didn't pursue education. It was probably money, and it was probably time, and I was really fending for myself at an early age. um but I have the opportunity now, and I never thought there was. And this is what the beautiful part of the internet and everything, and me meeting you. It's like the internet is very powerful.
Mhm.
Instagram, just putting stuff up on a website. The fact that you can even see my work, and my work is out there, and can even be seen, is quite powerful. So
Mhm.
I've learned that, and that's why I'm eager to build this learning platform. Is I know there's a lot of people like me that may be held back and not have the opportunities that everybody has. And um and I'd love to address those uh people, but also really give back more than I get back, because I
Mhm.
feel like I'm going to get as much back as I need. And is it about making $1 million? That would be fantastic. I could do so many things uh, positive for my girlfriend's nonprofit, for other things that I'm passionate about. But it isn't about making $1 million. It's about really ultimate happiness for myself. And I think that that's one thing I've always been striving for, is happiness.
Mhm.
And I put all these other things as far as goals, as that's what I was trying to reach, but happiness was never in it. And now when I said, when I teach people about like even emerging technology, like I've been learning about a lot about, you know, Midjourney, Chat GPT, and all these different things that are super disruptions in graphic design. Like people think that like AI is going to take over graphic designers' jobs, and that's very understandable because I've been through, you know, when the computer that took away what I was doing before, right? Phones now have better cameras than DSLRs and traditional film cameras. I've been through this before. They're all just tools, and it's how you use those tools. And you have to adapt. You have to understand that to where your place in this is. And if it's still in drawing and painting, definitely go all in on that, because there's still a place for that.
It's crazy for me to say this, but I'm 36.
Damn, you're old.
I know. I
No,
didn't think that was the case, but no, I guess, you know, I think it's really great for you to start something like this, to be vulnerable about kind of what you know and what you don't know, and have some honest conversations like this. I think you're ahead of the game, honestly. But let me ask you this. Let's say 10 years from now, you're 32 at this point. How do you describe what a successful creative career is at that point? And do you think you'll be successful at it?
That's a good question. I would like to think that, and I'm not by any means a cocky person. I have very large amounts of insecurity around pretty much everything I do. But I would like to think that no matter, and I've kind of always had this in my head, that no matter what no matter what I do, I'm going to find a way to be successful. And that was back, you know, when I tried to apply that mindset to school, to creativity, and it scaled kind of the same way that you did. Like you start doing this one thing and it kind of leads to another thing, and you want to learn how to do it. And the biggest superpower you can have is just having a belief in yourself that you're just going to have the grit to overcome it. And like you start at creativity and then you find a way, oh, how do I make a way to do this to a living? A step after that is to learn marketing, business, contracts, invoicing, all that stuff. And then use that to get more work. How do you use it to serve people in the best way you can? If I was going to tell myself now what a successful career looked like, I think it would be to just trying everything and then trying to find that one thing that you can't stop thinking about. And for me, so far, that's the goal of, you know, having these conversations, is to try and figure out what inspires other people and what they can't stop thinking about. Because I think I don't know if it's the self-awareness. I don't know if anyone can feel this in the moment, but you really haven't found that thing. And I think the more I'm kind of starting to go on this journey of, you know, the creative industry and making a career out of design and service, is that I don't know if you ever really find it. I think it's just kind of the pursuit of looking for that thing and then learning as much as you can on the way. And that, I don't know how accurate that is, but I just I told my parents from the start, was just like kind of following the trail of creativity, kind of like a cat follows the thread of a yarn ball, you know, it's kind of like kind of aimlessly, but you're just kind of picking up sensory feedback on the way. And it's just kind of having the faith that's all going to work out, I think, is big too.
That's awesome, man. You know, I guess one of the reasons I ask you that, because it's like, it's interesting for me to think back on like, what would 22-year-old me say about anything?
What would you say?
I can also, I'm not trying to be cocky here, but he would be proud for sure.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be really happy with how everything is sort of going at the moment. I don't know. I guess that's really all I can think about at this moment. Honestly, for me, it goes back to even my 12-year-old self. Like I talk about this all the time, but like I'm always thinking about 12-year-old me
Mhm.
And like, you know what, that kid, he wanted to make stuff. He wanted to make stuff all day long. And I mean, no, I don't necessarily like make stuff necessarily all day long anymore, but I'm still happy. I'm happy with the time that I had with, you know, being a 3D artist and now kind of being more of a creative director or film director. It's kind of one of those things where you're like, you kind of have these periods, and it's like, it's okay for them to end. And I think 22-year-old me probably would have said, like, you sell out, like, you stop doing the thing. Like, we said that you weren't going to do that.
Yeah.
But I think there was also, again, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing. And I guess one of my other beliefs is that, like, you're under no obligation to be the person you were yesterday.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that I say all the time, but also said by Alan Watts most famously.
Gone about your career as by getting yourself, you know, into circles with high performers, people that you admire and want to rub off on you, in kind of like all areas of life. Like, how do you kind of keep tabs on that?
Mhm. Yeah, I have a few different answers to this, but I think this is a really good question and is really important for people to be mindful of because it makes a huge difference. I mean, my answer is really about finding your tribe, Andy, and being able to find the people that fill your cup and that you share similar values and mindsets and goals and beliefs with. But it's really hard to find your tribe until you know how you position yourself. And so you had asked earlier, like, how do you make the most of conversations and how do you get in touch with people and how do you make the most of networking and know what things to go to? I've seen a lot of really smart, really talented people struggle there because they don't know how to position themselves. And as you know, a designer, you understand what brand is and you understand what positioning is, but most people don't think about it, right? And so positioning is not just for brands and products, it's for people too, right? And so if I think about who am I as a person, where do I want to go and grow, and who are the sorts of people that I want to be like, that I want to be with, like you have to think about yourself in a tight positioning, which really just means what bucket would you put me in? How would you describe me? And how do you keep that tight and narrow? You know, because we're in 2024 now, I guess. I've talked to lots of folks over the last couple of years who are senior executives, who are C-suite, who are really talented, have this amazing career. And when I'm having coffee with them, I say, like, what's next? What sort of job are you looking for? And they say, well, I don't know, because I could do anything. You know, like my career has been this broad, and I could do some finance, I could do some operations, I could do some merchandising, I can do some creative direction, I could do, you know, like all of these different things. It's like, oh gosh, you're going to really struggle in a job interview. Like, I have to tell you, like, I don't know who to connect you with. And I say, well, what type of company are you looking for? Tell me more about the specifics. Well, it could be big, it could be small, it could be anything. I just want a great team. Well, that's so ambiguous. And we as humans, whether we like it or not, because it also creates a lot of problems in the world, we want to bucket people in groups and categories, right? And that's what positioning is thinking through, like, okay, when I say McDonald's, like I have a certain positioning in my head that I think of McDonald's for, and things I attribute with McDonald's that I may not a steakhouse brand or something else, right?
Mhm.
And so you have to think about how you position yourself to be able to find your tribe. Like, how would you describe yourself? How do you want others to see you? And then where do you want to continue to be in the future? And I think you need to have a lot of self-reflection to be able to identify who is your tribe, right? And to be willing to do some experimenting with who your tribe is, because it's also going to change over time. But one thing that I've done there, Andy, is to surround myself with lots of other ambitious people who have high aspirations for themselves and for the impact they'll make in the world, but also really give a damn about their family and community. And so both of those things are very important to me. And it's easy if you over-index on one side or the other to like almost create your own guilt track, like your own negative head trash. Like if I spend time with people who are 100% all in, only focused on family, and that is great for them, and that is wonderful. They're not doing anything wrong, but by spending a lot of time with them, when they start talking through like, oh my gosh, I'm involved with XYZ in my kid's school, and I don't know how you have time for all this stuff. How do you spend time with your kids on homework, and how do you XYZ, and here's what I'm doing. I start to like really beat myself up internally, like, oh gosh, should I be doing that? Should I be going to all of my kids' like volunteering for all of their field trips and all of their school holiday parties. And gosh, maybe I should be doing that. I'm a terrible mom. And I'm not, by the way, but like, it's just really easy when you compare yourself, because that is what that person is all in on, and good for them. That is amazing. And I want to be all in for my kids too, but in a different way. The same thing goes if I spend time with people who don't have any focus on their family, don't have any focus on community, and don't have any focus on their health or their personal well-being. And they're just grinding nonstop to meet a vision, to meet a career goal. Listen, I can learn a lot from those people, and I have a lot of those people in my circle, but they're not the people I spend the most time with. They're not the people that I seek out for the biggest challenges that I'm facing, because I think their values and where they focus might be a little different than mine. So I've spent a lot of time curating my closest group of friends and mentors and peers, the people that I will shut down a restaurant with on a Tuesday night after our kids go to bed, right? Because it's the best time for us to meet. Spending time with those people fills my cup, aligned to my values, challenge me in the things that I want to do and where I'm going. But you have to do a lot of introspection first to be able to identify who are those people. And by the way, if they share your values, they're going to be super jazzed and energized to spend time with you too, right? And so it becomes very symbiotic, where you grow together, you have each other's back, just by being super aligned on values and positioning and the things that are important to you.
Like, there's just not one size fits all for any of this stuff. So, like, for how your career progresses, like, I think one of the things that you kind of mentioned already, like, you're sort of earlier on in your career, but something that you have now is that you get to witness so many people's careers on social media. And like you said, you can see what's possible. And I think that helps you work out what you want. It's almost like a curse and a blessing, right? Because seeing what everybody else is doing makes you think, oh, maybe that's what I should want. And then I think sometimes we get confused about A, what success looks like for us, and B, what we should want. But then I think the other, like, the blessing of it is that you can look around and see a whole load of different people doing different things and be like, oh, actually, I think I didn't even think that was an option. Oh, now I can see someone do it. I can kind of work out how that could be the reality for me. And so I think, a big part of it is A, knowing what you're like and how you want to work. And then also knowing, like, what it is that you want, like, what does success look like for you? Because as you said at the beginning of our chat, like, it is really different. Some people aspire to a massive agency. Some people want a more lifestyle business where actually they earn enough that they're not having to work all the time. There's so many different ways of doing it. But I think it does take a lot of trial and error and just playing around to work that out. And I think that's okay. Like, I feel like one of my huge values as a designer, as a business owner, is experimenting. And so just trying things, but holding them lightly and being okay with the fact that I might change my mind and decide, actually, I thought this is what I wanted, and now I've realized, having tried it, it's not. So I'm going to move on to the next thing, and that being an okay part of the sort of process and the journey.
Yeah, I love that. Do you know who Ali Abdaal is? He's UK. Yeah. So he talks about this thing called, like, approaching life like as an experimenter. So trying to, whether it's trying a new career path, whether it's, talking to someone new, whether it's doing all these things, you don't attach your emotions or your metric of success to the end outcome. You just, if you did the thing, that was success. And then the experience that you gain from it is, the value that comes from it. And that's really hard to do, because I think a lot of people, I know myself, was at least raised with a very black and white measure of what success was. And to kind of reorient that is, you feel like you're kind of tricking yourself a little bit at first, like, oh, okay, I mean, just doing it doesn't really get you there. But once you build the habit of just putting yourself out there more and more, and it becomes addicting. It becomes, starting a podcast, making connections with people. As someone that wasn't great at talking to people, I was like, okay, this is awesome. Like, making these connections. I mean, podcast people are just super cool. And I mean, learning too. Like, it's just, yeah, I love everything you just said right there. And there's a lot that I was going to go, but that was really good. Thank you. But that also leads me to something else I wanted to talk to you about, was it was like one of the first pieces of content that I really resonated with of yours was kind of your approach to rejection and how you've taken that to like extreme hearts. You started like a whole movement behind it. And I just want you to unpack that because I started a little experiment of my own and definitely helped me in my career. So I would, love to hear how that got started and some of the wins and maybe funny stories that have come out of it for you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, it was about a year and a half ago, and I was lucky enough to go to Adobe Max, which was in LA, and I bought Christo's book at a stand. And I think I met him like really briefly, just to sort of like say hi when he was there or whatever. Anyway, I did the classic thing. I took a picture of it, posted it on my Instagram stories, tagged him, and he replied and was like, "Oh, thanks for the tag." Which I was like, "Oh, I didn't expect him to reply. That's nice." So I thought, "Oh, okay, if I reply to him now, he'll probably see it because he's in his DMs and like he's already messaged me, so it'll probably show up in his inbox." So I just thought on a whim, all right, I'm going to just invite him to be on my podcast. And I did. And he asked me how many downloads it gets. And I told him, and he was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm looking for like a bigger audience." So he said no. And what was interesting to me there was the reaction that I had. So like in the moment, I felt really uncomfortable. I think I felt embarrassed. I was like, "Oh, I shouldn't have asked him." I think I felt a bit of like shame, the whole thing did not feel good. And I remember thinking, right, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to ask someone of that kind of like level of fame to be on my podcast because this just doesn't feel good. And so then over the following months, I kind of started to unpack that. And I was like, hang on a minute, if that's sort of the reaction that I'm having from probably like the nicest rejection you could ever get, like he was so friendly and kind about it. I was like, how is this holding me back? How is this stopping me going from things? Because I'm just having this like extreme reaction to something that's actually in the grand scheme of things pretty minor. And it just made me realize that I think like that a lot. And so one of the things I have learned about myself as I've run my business is that I work really well if I have a challenge or if I turn it into a game, if I make it something fun. So a friend of mine called Katie, she's an illustrator. I remembered reading a blog post she wrote a few years ago where she had done this like seeking out no's, like she'd intentionally gone out looking for no's. And there's lots of people doing it online. I think, I definitely can't take the credit for the idea. But so I thought, okay, great, I'm going to do a rejection challenge. So I set myself a challenge to get 100 rejections in 6 months. And what was so interesting to me was how my mindset on it just switched like immediately. It wasn't even like I needed to get all the rejections for my mindset to change. It was like, because I'd made the decision to do that, I'd like straight away turned it into a win-win situation for myself. So if they said yes, great. Obviously, that was what I was hoping for. But if they said no, then it just helped me get closer to my goal. And then obviously I started making content about it. People like resonated with it because, this is the other thing. It's something that everyone struggles with, but we don't talk about it because we think it looks unprofessional or, like what are our clients going to think if we said, we got, someone turned us down or someone didn't want to work for us. I think we've got these like very sort of outdated views of professionalism now. And so I started sharing a lot about it and connecting with different people. And one of the things that was really cool is a bit like how you said you've done your own like little challenge, like people started messaging me being like, "Oh, I'm not doing a challenge, but you like seeing you post about it inspired me to pitch for this thing and it's happening." And they said yes. And, all these other people started doing it as well. And it's just been like a hugely positive thing for me. And it has really changed how I think about rejection. And I think having to sort of like think about it and analyze how I was feeling after each one just helped me accept it as part of the process, especially as a creative. I think it's so, it is a really scary, vulnerable thing to put your work out into the world, even to show your work to clients I still get terrified about that. And so like just accepting, actually, this is just a really normal and natural part of the creative process. Everybody's experiencing it, even if they don't talk about it. And then I think I just got really excited about talking about it because I wanted everyone else to feel like, yeah, this is okay. You know, it's okay that I got rejected. It doesn't mean I'm terrible at what I do, because that's what we do, don't we? We are like, the voice in our head starts to like fill in the gaps, and it's like, well, I haven't heard from them, so they must think they either hate me or they think I'm terrible at what I do, and we just like make up this story that's not even true. And usually it's like that the email ended up in their spam folder, or like they just had a crazy day and they saw it and then forgot to reply. You know, like there's so many other stories and other reasons that it could be, but we always sort of go for the worst case scenario.
Sprints where you can do these badass side projects. Like, okay, I'm in a position now where I can do this for a week, and I can still control all these other areas of my business. But this is what I need to be spending my time on right now, and then really dive in deep on that. And it's nice to not be able to not have to do the same thing every single day too, because that's
taken a long time for me to carve that out. Like, that's not something that's just happened overnight. Like I've spent the last 3 years trying to make this kind of, you know, day-to-day life happen, and it is I'm very lucky and I'm very fortunate. I've worked hard to get here, but obviously I'm trying to diversify my income streams at the minute. I do my main business is the business of logo design. But also now I'm sort of branching out into things like public speaking, digital products, a little bit of paid partnerships as well. Like, you know, it's kind of when you do a paid partnership with someone and you make twice as much as you would for a logo project, which takes you a month to complete. It's kind of a bit like, what am I doing here? I'm in the wrong business. So yeah, no, it's nice to be able to kind of branch out into those things. But like I said, it's taken a long time to get here, and I'm only able to do that because I'm a freelancer and I can set my own schedule. And you know, I follow people like Chris Doe and James Martin, who are in the business of graphic design, and I've learned from them, and I've learned to charge a little bit more and how to charge a little bit more. And that has really helped me kind of build in that buffer to be able to work on my own sort of side projects. And yeah, like I say, I've been wanting to make a course for something like a year, just have never found the time. And I forced myself to go, right, I'm not booking any new projects until the new year, to give me at least 6 weeks to do this, because it's huge. Like, that's not like me at all. I like short projects that take a day or two to finish because the end is in sight. When the end is 6 weeks away and you're writing, you know, 12,000 word script, that's really difficult to kind of keep the keep the focus on something like that when the end of the goal is so far away. And there's so much to do. I find it really hard to not procrastinate and dip my toe into other little things. So this has been really tough. And I was only able to do that because I'm a freelancer who can say, right, I'm not working on any client work until the new year. So it's been kind of scary and kind of great at the same time. Yes, it's weird.
Yeah, that's awesome. That reminds me, I hate to bring up like James Clear again, but he was I heard him on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he mentioned something really similar, but like for writers. And I really felt this because, like, his whole career, he was a blogger, right? So he's like, and he talks all about feedback loops. That's his big thing with habits is they have to, they have to be rewarded or discouraged, and that's what keeps them in place. So like he went from a blog writer, you know, uploading every 3 days, every day, every 3 days, to a source online, to writing his first book, Atomic Habits, which took him almost 5 years to write. So he's like, yeah, this could have been, he just stopped and he was still scraping out blogs in the background. But he said, yeah, this is, you know, if I look at my life before and after, that period was necessary. When you're going through it, when you're going through the bullshit of the whole day can go by of grinding, and you feel like it's just as big of a mess as you started because, you know, no one's giving you feedback and you're kind of doing it yourself, and the payoff is so far away.
A bit of perspective. Yeah, that's really tough. That's it, isn't it? It's the lack of feedback as you're going is one of the hardest things to kind of push through. And you know, I got approached to write a book last year, and we sort of toyed with some ideas, and ultimately it's been put on pause because I can't find the promise of the book, like what's the sort of selling point of it. But B, it's like that project is a 6-month project, and with no kind of financial reward or kind of, you know, the dopamine hit of launching something and it doing well, that won't come for such a long time. It's a huge undertaking. So I'm really impressed by people like James Martin and Alan Peters who've just launched these books about logo design and how long that took and how much effort that took to do.
Yeah.
But now that they're out there, those guys are kind of so established, and that's the reward of it comes much later. So yeah, in our world of sort of short attention spans and dopamine hits of posting content on social media, projects like that are really they're so different. And this course has actually been like a huge thing for me. Like 6 weeks isn't as long as sort of writing a book, but it's felt like this is an actual project, and I've been really enjoying kind of diving into this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having projects like that, there's points where because I get into my own head a lot, and I think, what is like the trajectory of a creative career? There's going to be times where it's not, I say you don't want it to be the same thing every day, but there's going to be times where it looks different, where the stuff like that, where even if it doesn't feel like that, you're not getting the feedback, the stuff like that is what's actually moving your business forward. And something that I think is going to be really hard for not just me, but other people as you grow and scale, is having to say, no to stuff like that. And for someone like you who's scaled really quickly, after you started, I mean, I know obviously years of hard work and doing stuff that wasn't your ideal life, and then getting there, and then you're at a point where you have a lot of stuff, you have to say no to, like, and doing that in sacrifice of something that may not be as enjoyable in the moment. But, when that course comes out, when that book comes out, I'm going to be really excited, to consume it, because, we trust you. And now that I know the stuff that you've gone, and you shared it too, you shared the journey with us of, going through the bullshit of, Premiere, and then all the small tips and the stuff behind the scenes. We've all seen it. And then when the course comes out, it's like, man, here it is. Like, this is what you've been building towards. So I know we're all excited to see it. So
it's all new to me. This kind of thing. I read a book called Launch by Jeff Walker, and it's, if you haven't read that and you're thinking about launching something like a digital product, you should definitely check it out. He's like a marketing guru who has made millions selling, online tutorials and boot camps, workshops, that kind of stuff. This behind the scenes stuff, it's such a self-fulfilling thing, because people it's a piece of content that I can put out there to kind of generate excitement around the course and build up kind of a bit of momentum to it, and drive people to places like newsletter sign up so they can get access to it when it comes out early. But at the same time, for me, it's like a diary of the process, and I'm kind of structuring how to build this course is actually going to all be documented, and so I can go back and repeat this process next time round. It's brilliant. I love doing this, and like you say, it's down and dirty. I just whip my phone out and show what I'm doing at my desk, and all the production software, like the lights that I had to buy, the teleprompter, the camera setup, all of that stuff. It's like lovely and behind the scenes for people, but at the same time, it's a note for me of how to do it and what to do next time around.